So I've seen something you were in a strip test. You were in a session I was in yesterday. Anyway, so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about FreshWater Watch, which is essentially a program about reinforcing scientists and agencies by bringing communities into the mix. This program is going on in 37 different locations across the globe. We're on every continent except Antarctica, and that is a little worrying, but we're on every continent except Antarctica, and we're working to support science in each one of these areas, or agencies in each one of these areas. So we're working with the Ministry of Agriculture in Stockholm, Indonesia. We're working with Columbia University in New York. We're working with CEH and Freshwater Habitats Trust. Where are you guys from? Where are you from? Switzerland. Canada. Canada. So in most of those places, not Mozambique, we're working, there are citizen scientists already engaged in the program, but essentially in each one of these areas there's a local priority that the scientists didn't have the information needed. So in New York, Columbia University is going out and measure every time it rains in New York is in most big cities. If it rains a certain amount, the sewers and the rain drains combine and dump unpleasant things into New York's waterways. To understand when that occurs and what is the tipping points for different waterways, you need information. You need information before and after rain events. And as a scientist, I can get a couple of my students and whip them into shapes that they're actually going to do that in 4 or 5 water bodies. But if I can get 100 or 200 or 300 citizen scientists to do this in teams, then I can monitor a whole lot more water bodies than just those 4 or 5. And so that when I come up with a suggestion on what the impact or what the value of greening New York is, so putting in green spaces, I'm a lot more robust in my estimation of the possible benefits because I have a lot more things monitored. And that's the same as in Sao Paulo, where we're monitoring what's causing algal blooms. In Jakarta and Guangzhou, we're monitoring the impact of agricultural pollution. When does that occur? When they change agricultural policy, does that impact? Does that have an actual benefit for the potable water supplies downstream? So we're able to do that, or they're able to do that, because now they have hundreds, if not thousands in some areas, citizen scientists gathering this data for them. So the keys of making this work are training these people, allowing them to do this in the safest manner possible, and keeping them engaged. So the training is something that, having done this in 40 years, Earthwatch, but having done this in almost 40 different places, we figured out what works best to make an exciting and engaging training day. The reason you're going to join this program is because you really want to do something for the environment, and because you feel that something needs to be done. So the reason you came on the day is you have that already. But what we need to do is get you to understand why you're doing this. So where am my data going? Who's going to do what with my data? What does my data mean? And when they've got those 3 things under the belt, then they're understanding the reason the agency asked them to do this. They're understanding why the scientist is asking them to go up before and after the rain event. And then they're citizen scientists. And now we just have to keep them engaged for as long as possible. And that's what some of our partners are really good at, but that's what we're relatively good in too, things like gamification. So the reason he's going to go out more than you, because you are on top of the leaderboard, and he wants to be on top of the leaderboard, and boys are really competitive, so he's going to go out and take more measurements than you over this weekend. And you'd be surprised when someone drops down the leader and they fall off the top 10, all of a sudden they're panicking. So that's a motivator for some people. For some people, it's the fact that the scientist is feeding back to them. So let's pretend you're the scientist, and you're now feeding back to all these people, and that's going to keep me motivated because I see that my effort. It was raining Sunday morning. I went out anyway. And you appreciated that because you feed back to me saying, thanks to your measurements, now I understand. I'm able to define some limits to the impacts of land or to the impacts of geological conditions or whatever. So we need to make sure that there's a strong contact between scientists and the agency. We need to make sure that there's some sort of gamification. We need to make sure that there's a regular feedback so that there's a continual learning process. It's not just like we go on training today, and it's very likely that he will never see you again because you may be on the other side of the city or he's very busy, but he will be feeding back to you all the time so that your understanding of freshwater challenge in whatever city increases. Then you're also part of a global program. So the measurements taken in Hyderabad, the measurements taken in Jakarta, the measurements taken in the city in Nigeria are all the same measurements. So you can compare the temporal dynamics before and after monsoons to the temporal dynamics before and after snowmelt and see if there are any relationships. And you can also compare it with your cousin's measurement over in Vancouver to see if who has the best water, if that's what it is. So the methods that we use in this are a lot focused on keeping people engaged. Another main thing is to make sure that people take robust data. So we need to use an approach that is inexpensive because we're extending this out across 10,000 people. Robust because you're going to use it for your publications and you're going to use it for making land use change decisions. And inexpensive. So safe, inexpensive, and robust. So what we've come up with, and now working with these guys from Akvo and Nana, we'll be able to think about new ways of analyzing some of this data. But the information that we ask people to gather is ecological information about the microcellular. So you're measuring the stream behind your house. I can, from my satellite information, I know that the stream around your house has a catchment that's full of agricultural activities. And I can actually see your house on my Google map, on my satellite data. But what I can't see is that the stream you're measuring, where you're measuring, has an actual pollution. It has a discharge from your house, hopefully not, from a street, from an industry. That kind of micro-scale information is not available from satellites. It's usually not available from any. The EU wants all wastewater discharges, all discharges to be recorded. But we're talking big discharges. We're not talking a little discharge, a little pipe that runs into the pond or street. So the only place that's recorded is the moment that citizen scientist records it, and records it over and over again. So we're sure it's there. So things about discharges, things about water color, things about the presence of algal blooms using photographic information, things about stream velocity, about lake level. That information can be gathered after a training that is reasonably robust. And then we ask them, the reason it's robust is because we're testing how robust it is. So we've been able to test, and I'll get to this in a second, but combining turbidity measurements with water color allows me to understand, first of all, what's the concentration of particulates in this stream, in this water body. And if I know the concentration of particulates and I know the color, I can also try to guess what's the cause. So if it's brown, it's probably going to be organic matter related or sediment related. If it's green, it's going to be phytoplankton related. And there's a publication that came out last year that based on our data that essentially show that a citizen scientist can accurately monitor an algal bloom using turbidity measurements and water color. So it works. So in addition to that, we're also measuring the main drivers of degradation in most of these water bodies, which is eutrophication, by measuring phosphate concentrations and nitrate concentrations. That is a simple colorimetric analysis, relatively robust. They come in ranges. The good part about this is that, well, there's multiple good parts. One is that the reagents are away from the person, so you're not going to touch this to contaminate it. There's nothing you can touch there inside. You can't spray this powder into your face because it's closed inside here, so it's safe. And it goes to a very low detection limit because I can put pretty nasty chemicals in here. Not that nasty, but I can put zinc in here, and I can put, which allows me to go to a detection limit that's really low. And that low detection limit allows me to work in a place like Vancouver where you can essentially drink the stream water. Don't drink the stream water. Compared to a lot of places where we're working, the water's relatively clean, and we get measurements. And so these colorimetric measurements are what the nutrient eutrophication study is based on. And for example, this is phosphate, this is nitrate from the fountain outside in Stockholm. So agricultural pollution somehow is getting into the water, it's getting into that, because nitrates are going to come, that's where they're coming from. So we're able to measure with this, relate impacts within the catchment to what's happening in different parts of the stream. And it's not a stat. It's not something that you measure it once and classify the stream, because obviously it's going to have a seasonal dynamic, it's going to have a post-monsoon, pre-monsoon dynamic, it's going to have a snow melt dynamic, it's going to have lots of things. The temporal variability is really important. So what we're trying to do is essentially get people to become stewards of their environment and then equip them with the instrumentation where they can do that, and then have them work with the agency, NGO, or research institution that is going to benefit from the activities they're doing. So that's the approach, and that's kind of the standard freshwater watch. We've learned over the last year or so that whereas all of us would probably very happily do that, there's a large percent of the population that won't dedicate 20 minutes a month to take a measurement in a local area because they're too busy. So another approach we found is something we call the blitz. And the blitz is rather than train 200 people to take measurements for 2 years, we're going to get 600 people. We're going to ask them to dedicate 15 minutes on one day all together to measure the water quality in a particular catchment. So let's take a catchment in Switzerland. What's a big river? What's an important catchment in Switzerland? Full of lakes. So I guess that's okay. Rhine. Okay, the Rhine. The Rhine's really big, so that would take more than 600. Let's say we get 6,000 people. Let's think big. So let's talk about in the Thames, which is a big river, not Rhine's scale, but big. We got last September and last April, we got 600 people to go out, different, mostly the same, a lot of the same, but some different people, to take a measurement on one day in September and one day in April. It took them 15 minutes. And we're working with the Environment Agency, we're working with CEH, we're working with river trusts throughout the catchment, throughout the Thames catchment. And these people went out and dedicated 15 minutes to their catchment, took the measurement, uploaded it online, and now we have a map of 700 measurement spots on a single day throughout the Thames, from tip to toe, that the Environment Agency does a fabulous job, great people, but they have like 30 or 40 measurement spots along the same area. So now we're multiplied by an order of magnitude the amount of information they have built, and that has allowed them and us and CEH. CEH can validate their models. We can start to use this kind of geographic information to identify phosphate hotspots, nitrate trends.
So that's what they measure, phosphate.
So it's a much simpler. It doesn't take twice. It's not turbidity. We ask them to gather 4 or 5 observational variables to help us contextualize the information, and then because I can teach you this online in about 10 minutes.
The logistics of recruiting people and doing all this, did you manage people up so they went out close to their own home?
Yeah, we said go. We said well.
Or did you tell them, or did they go and pick a spot?
They picked the spot. We said this is what we need. We don't want you to go on the Thames River. If you want, you can. But it would be much more important. All these tributaries, all these ditches, the ponds next to the Thames, nobody measures that. And for the first time, boom, we've got 700 measurements in places that nobody's ever measured.
Did you set the day ahead of time, or did you look at
whether we set the day, and we're already promotion for, you need to do promotion. It's great for school. It's great for companies. We got corporations involved. So we're not asking you the Fortune 500 company owner. You can dedicate 15 minutes to your employees. And plus, that means at that point you can retire after it's perfect because you gather super quality information. And you're right, one measurement is not going to tell me a lot. If I got 500 measurements, 400 measurements along the catchment, that tells me a lot. And it's one day, but that's one day more than that's a photograph. The second time we had a drop of people going back, but the reason is, what you're nominated for, the advice, the chain of publicizing this, dropped off geographically at a certain point, a little downscale of Oxfordshire. Oxfordshire, we had more people active. Downscale of Oxfordshire, a lot of people didn't care about it. So,
But you still had a reasonable
we just had an incredible response. And now we're going to do it again, and we're learning from those experiences and finding, because a lot of the people who are going to do this, maybe they're not going to be walking, they're not going to have Twitter, they might not even have a phone. So we have to appeal to a range of the pensioners who are a little IT afraid, the teachers who are super busy and doing 3,000 things. So you have to make sure it's coordinated and everyone can play. When the EA starts seeing all these data sites popping up on the map, that's incredible information. I was jumping up and down with joy saying, okay, I'm not going to do anything else, I'm going to start working. Anyway, thank you. Questions? Yeah.
Yeah, not a question, but an observation. I think one of the ways we also work on citizens monitoring is not use them as simply
Data gatherers.
gatherers. So it's very important that that feeling does not come to them. And that's something we've done so that the data provider is better informed or better armed for the data she has provided. And that they're able to take action for problems identified in their place so that it benefits them and their community first. Not that it becomes an academic exercise for a paper to be published or for just one example on this. Kids around a particular poor area in India, they did a water survey for fluoride, mapped the whole thing for the villages, and then wrote to the district administration saying, this is what we have done. They learned a lot of things about water quality about fluoride. And when they were able to tell it to the government, and the government was able to react to it, they couldn't negate it because it was children who had done it.
Because they have numbers, yeah.
Yeah, so then you had to re-verify, but then do it. So I think
Well,
empowering...
we've had that in Brazil and
Yep.
Nigeria. It's happening. Excellent comment, thank you.